Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're embarking on an in-depth exploration of a critical and complex topic, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. This issue has profound implications not only for the two countries involved, but also for international relations and global security. To truly understand the roots of this conflict, we need to delve deep into history, examine geopolitical strategies, and consider the cultural and national identities at play. So, let's unravel the intricate tapestry that has led to the current state of affairs between Russia and Ukraine. To grasp the nuances of the present conflict, it's essential to journey back through centuries of shared and divergent histories. The origins of both Russia and Ukraine can be traced back to the medieval state of Kievan Rus, which existed from the late 9th to the mid-13th century. Centered around Kiev, Kievan Rus was a federation of Slavic tribes that played a pivotal role in the cultural, political, and religious development of Eastern Europe. In 988 AD, Prince Vladimir the Great converted to Christianity and baptized the populace, aligning the state with Eastern Orthodoxy, a legacy that profoundly influences both nations to this day. The Mongol invasion in the 13th century brought about the fragmentation of Kievan Rus. The northeastern regions, which would later become Russia, fell under the Mongol Golden Horde's domination, leading to significant cultural and political shifts. Meanwhile, the southwestern territories, including much of present-day Ukraine, came under the influence of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and later the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. This divergence resulted in differing religious affiliations, with Western Ukraine experiencing significant Catholic and Uniate Eastern Rite Catholic influences, contrasting with the Orthodox East. In the 17th century, the Cossacks, a group of predominantly East Slavic-speaking people known for their military prowess, established the Cossack Hetmanate in central Ukraine. Seeking to preserve their autonomy from Polish domination, they entered into the Treaty of Pereyaslav in 1654 with the Tsardom of Russia. This agreement was intended to be a military alliance, but gradually led to increasing Russian influence and eventual control over Ukrainian territories. The late 18th century saw the partitions of Poland by Russia, Prussia, and Austria. As a result, Eastern Galicia, Western Ukraine, came under Austro-Hungarian control, while the rest of Ukraine was absorbed into the expanding Russian Empire. Under imperial rule, Ukrainian culture and language were often suppressed. Policies like the Valuev Circular of 1863 and the Ems Ukaz of 1876 prohibited the publication and import of Ukrainian language literature, aiming to assimilate Ukrainians into Russian culture. Despite suppression, the 19th century witnessed a Ukrainian national awakening. Intellectuals and poets like Taras Shevchenko galvanized a sense of Ukrainian identity and nationalism through literature and cultural works. This growing consciousness laid the groundwork for future movements seeking autonomy and independence. The 20th century was a period of immense upheaval and tragedy for Ukraine. The collapse of the Russian Empire during World War I created a power vacuum. In 1917, the Ukrainian People's Republic was proclaimed, seeking independence amidst the chaos of the Russian Revolution. However, this independence was short-lived due to internal divisions and external pressures, particularly from the Bolsheviks, who sought to reclaim the territory. By 1922, Ukraine was incorporated into the Soviet Union as the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. The early Soviet period initially allowed for some cultural autonomy under the policy of korenizatsiya, indigenization, promoting local languages and cultures within the republics. The policy shifted dramatically under Joseph Stalin. In the early 1930s, forced collectivization aimed to consolidate individual landholdings into state-controlled farms. Resistance to collectivization was met with brutal repression. The result was the Holodomor of 1932-1933, a devastating famine that killed an estimated 3 to 7 million Ukrainians. Scholars debate the extent to which the famine was a deliberate act of genocide against the Ukrainian people, but it undeniably left deep scars and a legacy of distrust towards Soviet rule. The late 1930s saw the Great Purge, during which Ukrainian intellectuals, artists, and political leaders were persecuted. The suppression of Ukrainian culture intensified, aiming to eradicate any nationalist sentiments. Ukraine became one of the principal battlegrounds during World War II. Following Operation Barbarossa in 1941, Nazi Germany occupied Ukraine, leading to immense suffering. Millions of Ukrainians died, including a significant number of Jews during the Holocaust. Some Ukrainian nationalists seeking independence initially collaborated with the Germans, but later fought against both occupying forces. After the war, Ukraine's borders expanded westward to include territories like eastern Galicia and Volhynia, previously under Polish control. The Soviet regime rebuilt Ukraine's industrial base, particularly in the Donbas region, making it a critical economic hub. However, political repression continued, and any dissent was swiftly silenced. In 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster occurred in northern Ukraine, exposing systemic failures within the Soviet system. The catastrophe had long-term health and environmental consequences and fueled public disillusionment with Soviet governance. In the 1980s, under Mikhail Gorbachev's policies of perestroika, restructuring, and glasnost, openness, suppressed national sentiments resurfaced across the Soviet Union. In Ukraine, movements like RUK advocated for greater autonomy and environmental issues, gaining substantial support. On July 16, 1990, the Ukrainian parliament adopted the Declaration of State Sovereignty. Following the failed August coup in Moscow in 1991, Ukraine declared independence on August 24, 1991. A referendum on December 1, 1991 saw over 90% of Ukrainians voting in favor of independence, with strong support across all regions, including Crimea. At independence, Ukraine possessed the world's third-largest nuclear arsenal. Facing international pressure and economic incentives, Ukraine agreed to dismantle its nuclear weapons. The 1994 Budapest Memorandum saw Ukraine accede to the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. In return, Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom provided security assurances respecting Ukraine's independence, sovereignty, and existing borders. Ukraine's transition from a planned economy to a market economy was fraught with difficulties. The 1990s saw hyperinflation, industrial decline, and the rise of oligarchs who amassed significant wealth by acquiring state assets during privatization. The nascent democracy grappled with corruption and power struggles. Successive governments failed to implement effective reforms, leading to widespread public dissatisfaction. The 2004 presidential election became a flashpoint. The runoff between Viktor Yushchenko, a pro-Western reformist, and Viktor Yanukovych, the incumbent prime minister with close ties to Russia, was marred by allegations of massive electoral fraud favoring Yanukovych. International observers reported numerous irregularities. In response, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians took to the streets in peaceful protests, donning orange, the color of Yushchenko's campaign. The movement demanded fair elections and became known as the Orange Revolution. The Supreme Court of Ukraine annulled the runoff results and ordered a re-vote, which Yushchenko won. The Orange Revolution was a significant moment for Ukrainian civil society, demonstrating the power of public mobilization. It underscored the populace's desire for democratic governance, transparency, and closer ties with Europe. In 2013, Ukraine was set to sign an association agreement with the European Union, which would facilitate economic integration and political cooperation. This agreement was seen by many Ukrainians as a pathway to modernizing the country and combating corruption. At the last minute, President Yanukovych suspended preparations for signing the agreement, citing pressure from Russia and the need to protect national security and economic interests. Instead, he pursued closer ties with Russia, including a significant financial aid package. The decision sparked immediate protests, beginning with students and activists gathering in Kiev's Maidan Nezalezhnosti, Independence Square. The movement, dubbed Euromaidan, called for European integration and criticized the government's corruption and authoritarian tendencies. As protests grew, the government's response became increasingly heavy-handed. Clashes between protesters and security forces resulted in injuries and deaths. In February 2014, sniper fire in Kiev led to the deaths of over 100 people, escalating the crisis. Amid mounting pressure, Yanukovych fled the country in February 2014. The Ukrainian parliament voted to remove him from office and called for new elections. An interim government was established, which prioritized European integration. Crimea holds significant strategic value due to its location on the Black Sea and the presence of the Russian Black Sea Fleet in Sevastopol, leased from Ukraine. The peninsula has a majority ethnic Russian population, with historical ties to Russia dating back to its annexation by Catherine the Great in 1783. In late February 2014, unmarked troops, later acknowledged as Russian forces, took control of key facilities in Crimea. The swift operation faced little resistance from Ukrainian forces stationed there. On March 16, 2014, a referendum was held in Crimea under Russian control. Official results claimed that over 95% voted in favor of joining Russia, with a turnout exceeding 80%. However, the legitimacy of the referendum was widely disputed due to the presence of military forces, lack of international observers, and reports of irregularities. Russia formally annexed Crimea on March 18, 2015. The move was condemned by the United Nations General Assembly, which passed a resolution affirming Ukraine's territorial integrity. Many countries imposed sanctions on Russia, viewing the annexation as a violation of international law and Ukraine's sovereignty under the UN Charter and the Budapest Memorandum. Following the events in Crimea, pro-Russian sentiment grew in eastern Ukraine's Donetsk and Luhansk regions, collectively known as the Donbas. Armed groups seized government buildings, declaring the creation of the Donetsk People's Republic, DPR, and Luhansk People's Republic, LPR. The conflict evolved into a hybrid war, combining conventional warfare, irregular tactics, and cyber warfare. While Russia officially denied direct military involvement, evidence of Russian troops and equipment supporting separatists emerged, including captured soldiers and advanced weaponry not available to Ukrainian forces. In July 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 was shot down over eastern Ukraine, killing all 298 people on board. Investigations concluded that the aircraft was downed by a Russian-made Buk missile launched from separatist-held territory. The tragedy intensified international condemnation and led to expanded sanctions against Russia. The conflict has resulted in over 13,000 deaths and displaced approximately 1.5 million people. The regions affected have suffered significant infrastructure damage, economic decline, and a dire humanitarian situation. Efforts to resolve the conflict led to the Minsk Protocol in September 2014 and Minsk II in February 2015. These agreements, brokered by the OSCE with participation from Ukraine, Russia, France, and Germany, aimed to implement a ceasefire, withdraw heavy weapons, and grant special status to certain areas. However, violations have persisted, and a lasting peace has remained elusive. To understand Russia's actions, it's crucial to consider its geopolitical strategies and historical narratives. Russian leadership often cites the shared heritage stemming from Kievan Rus and the concept of the Russian world, Ruski Mir, emphasizing cultural and religious unity among East Slavic peoples. This narrative supports the idea of Ukraine as an integral part of Russia's historical sphere. Russia perceives the expansion of Western institutions like NATO and the EU into Eastern Europe as a direct threat to its national security. The prospect of Ukraine joining NATO is particularly contentious, as it would bring the alliance's military infrastructure closer to Russian borders. Control over Crimea secures Russia's access to the Black Sea and Mediterranean, vital for its naval capabilities. Additionally, eastern Ukraine's industrial base and resources are of significant economic interest. Nationalist sentiment within Russia supports assertive foreign policies to reclaim Russia's status as a great power. Actions in Ukraine bolster domestic approval for leadership by projecting strength and defending Russian-speaking populations abroad. The conflict has prompted a multifaceted response from the global community. The United States, European Union, and other countries have imposed sanctions targeting Russian banks, energy companies, and individuals connected to the Kremlin. These measures aim to pressure Russia into complying with international norms and withdrawing support for separatists. Organizations like the OSCE have facilitated dialogue between parties. The Normandy format talks involving Ukraine, Russia, Germany, and France continue to seek diplomatic solutions, though progress has been limited. Several countries have provided non-lethal military aid to Ukraine, including training and equipment to bolster its defense capabilities. Debates continue over supplying lethal aid, balancing support for Ukraine with concerns about escalating the conflict. International organizations monitor human rights violations and provide humanitarian assistance to affected populations. Reports have highlighted issues such as the treatment of prisoners, freedom of movement, and the plight of internally displaced persons. Europe's reliance on Russian natural gas, much of which transits through Ukraine, complicates the geopolitical landscape. Disputes over gas prices and supply have led to interruptions, impacting energy security. Russia's development of pipelines like Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, which bypass Ukraine by transporting gas directly to Germany under the Baltic Sea, reduces Ukraine's leverage and transit revenue. These projects have faced opposition from the US and Eastern European countries concerned about increased European dependence on Russian energy. Post-2014 governments have prioritized reforms to address corruption, improve governance, and integrate with European structures. Measures include establishing anti-corruption agencies, decentralizing power, and implementing judicial reforms. Progress has been hindered by entrenched interests, bureaucratic inertia, and political infighting. Public frustration persists over the pace of change and the perceived lack of accountability among officials. Ukraine has enacted laws promoting the use of the Ukrainian language in media, education, and public life, aiming to strengthen national identity. These policies have been contentious, particularly among Russian-speaking populations, and have been criticized by Russia as discriminatory. In 2018, the Orthodox Church of Ukraine received autocephaly, independence, from the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople, breaking from the Russian Orthodox Church. This move was significant in asserting Ukrainian cultural independence, but intensified religious tensions. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is deeply rooted in a complex interplay of historical legacies, geopolitical ambitions, cultural identities, and national sovereignty. It reflects broader themes of post-Cold War realignment, the challenges of nation-building, and the struggle between democratic aspirations and authoritarian tendencies. Resolving this conflict requires a nuanced understanding of the legitimate concerns and aspirations of all parties involved. It necessitates a commitment to international law, respect for sovereignty, and sustained diplomatic engagement. The international community plays a crucial role in supporting peaceful resolutions, providing humanitarian aid, and upholding the principles that underpin global security. As the situation continues to evolve, it remains a critical area of focus for policymakers, scholars, and citizens alike. Understanding its causes and complexities is essential for fostering informed dialogue and contributing to a more peaceful and stable international order. Thank you for joining us on this comprehensive exploration of the causes behind the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We hope this deep dive has provided valuable insights into the historical and contemporary factors shaping this critical issue. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analyses of global events. We'd love to hear your thoughts and perspectives in the comments below. Until next time, stay informed and engaged.